me.
Meg, I don't see Judy in yet. Can you see her on your
No,
screen?
she hasn't showed up yet.
Judy. Judy.
Judy.
Let me just check. I did not receive anything from her.
And I just emailed her the link. In
Okay.
case the calendar invite was causing issues, so I sent her the link.
Okay. We'll wait just a couple more minutes.
So it's funny, I have a beep when it's a district email.
Meg, you are live right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just waiting to see if Judy's having some issues connecting in.
My phone was just beep.
Your presentation was put together. Really good. They're mudding the drywall.
Yeah?
Yep. We picked out all the light fixtures and the plumbing fixtures and
Great.
and the garage doors this week.
This year?
Hmm?
This year?
Oh, yeah, we'll probably be in June.
I'm waiting for the barbecue. It's fresh veggies
Yep.
from the garden.
And we can socially distance there.
Right?
Judy says she's trying another computer. WebEx won't open for her.
Do Zoom.
Hey, Barb? Barb?
Yes,
I know before when I was having issues, I wasn't able to go into the link itself in the emails. So I was told I actually had to go into the calendar. And
Calendar?
Yeah. But I know Carlin just said that she sends a different link.
yeah.
We're getting a, like a 5-second delay in here.
Yeah.
Is that gonna?
I'm
we're
gonna probably just shut that door, so if there are people in there, we knew that would occur.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you can hear it though from here.
Yeah.
You can turn that TV down a little more if you need to.
Okay, I told her to check the calendar.
I know she's gotten in before, so there must just be something hinky going on. As we've all experienced in the time of COVID.
Right.
When you've been doing the same thing every time, and then the one time you try it, it doesn't work.
I have not had good luck with WebEx.
With what, the WebEx?
Yeah. It's just I get a lot of pixelating, even that meeting we had for the, on Wednesday. And there was not a lot of traffic. I mean, it was what, I was the only one.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't like you.
I'm on Zoom every day for 4 hours. I haven't had any problems with that.
Really?
Gosh, that's a long time.
Hmm?
That's a long time.
Tell me about it.
My sister just refuses to do it.
Every
She
day
said
since
it makes her
last
so
March.
uncomfortable.
Wow.
Phone on stun.
Oh, you know, I should just turn it off, because for some reason, when I have the sound on, I still get some weird stuff.
A little vibrate too. You gotta turn that vibrate off.
I think it's off. I mean, it's on, but it's off. Well, if it's not, we'll find out.
She's there.
Yay! Now we just need Craig.
I'll get him.
Can't start
I'll
the
get him,
meeting
yeah,
without
yeah.
him.
Where's Judy? It's here up there. Oh, she's the +1.
Yep.
Why don't they squeeze her on the bottom? There's room for one more on the bottom. What the heck?
There he is. Craig, we're ready.
Hollywood Squares, you know?
It's all a mystery. There he is. Hey, Craig.
I told.
Craig, we're all here. Oh, there. We will call the special school board meeting for the Stevens Point Area Public School Board for Monday, February 22nd, 2021 to order. I will note with respect to public access to meetings, due to the public health emergency and the need to limit gatherings, we are strongly encouraging members of the public to attend school board meetings remotely. And you can find information on our website with respect to how you can access remotely. I'm also going to note two ministerial things at the beginning. If board members who are here at the meeting can speak more directly into your mics during the meeting. The board members who are in WebEx are listening to you from the speaker up here, and they have a hard time hearing anybody past Corey and Jeff. The public can hear you because that's working off of a separate mic system, but if you have questions or comments, if you can directly speak into the mic, hopefully that'll allow the board members who are with us remotely to be able to hear you. The second point that I will make is that under the governor's order with respect to our state, in the event we are dealing with the business of the school district and we are presenting for a period of time, we are able to remove our masks to ensure that people can understand what we're saying. There may be times during this meeting where I will remove a mask, or Craig will remove a mask, or another member of the board will. That is consistent with the governor's order, but when we're not actively speaking, we are required to have our masks on. So with that, I will have Carlin do the roll call and verification of quorum.
Mr. Mansky,
Present.
Ms. Va.
Here.
Mr. Pope,
Here.
Ms. Portson,
Here.
Mr. Wade,
Present.
Ms. Scott,
Here.
Mr. Ebel,
Here.
Ms. Rano,
Here.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
All present, we have a quorum.
All right, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will move into item 4, which are public comments. I'm going to remove my mask because we have a number of public comments that I want to make sure board members are accurately hearing. At the March 19th, 2020 special school board meeting, the Stevens Point Area Public School District passed a motion to suspend School Board Policy 0167.3, public participation at board meetings for the duration of the public health crisis. Members of the public may provide public comment pertaining only to specific items on the meeting agenda via email at comments@pointschools.net. We did receive a number of emails, public comment emails. There were some that were beyond the deadline. I will not be reading them. There are others that exceeded the word count. We had increased the word count to 100 for this meeting, but there's some that exceeded that word count. And I'm not going to read those as well because I can't parse which of those 100 words the authors would have wanted me to read. Every email that's received by this district is a matter of public record. It is retained at the district, and it is accessible by all of our board members. So I just wanted to note that in the event people are wondering if they sent one and why it wasn't read this evening. The emails are separated into two general categories. One with respect to the superintendent's report, which is going to be the first item on the agenda. I will read those first. The second is with respect to the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator, which will be later in the agenda, and I will read those then next, after I do the first ones. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading. The first email is from Elizabeth Van Asten, and she wrote, I object to our children being out of school for a year now and want them back in school. I also object to the position to teach diversity. I've seen how other states are implementing this in their curriculum, and it is very biased. If a single race is singled out, it is not unbiased. We received an email from Jean van de Larschot. As a taxpayer and parent, it's time to open our schools and get back to normal. Enough is enough. Follow the science. An email from Ron and Donna Carlson. The time has come. The children need to be in school learning and socializing. In short, trying to be, quote, normal, end quote, once again. We find it amazing that parochial schools have been open all year to all children, teachers, and staff, but public schools cannot accomplish this. You are better than this. We understand the challenges, but the time to act is now. No more delays, no more excuses. Time to get it done. Get the children back in school. The children are our future, and it is about the children. An email from Amy Limberg. I implore you to release a clear and transparent plan that delineates when our students can go back. The current plan is not working for our kids, nor is it working well for parents and teachers. After a year of decline, they are worth the risk. Time to take it. An email from Linda Wanta. Our students need to be in school 5 days per week. They need to be allowed to be maskless if they so choose. Clubs, sports, music, theater, all available, and no politics taught. I will see you all Monday evening. An email from Janiyah Grove. Good afternoon. I am emailing about having the middle and high school go back to 4 days a week. I have 2 7th grade boys that go to Ben Franklin who are really struggling. They need structure and routine. Trying to stay focused and basically trying to teach themselves is not working. They're even saying they need to be in school. It would be so much easier for them to understand. My one son is really struggling with his stuff and is failing some of his classes right now. Please open school back up to 4 days. Thank you, Janiyah Grove. An email from Miranda Baker. And we received several emails from Miranda Baker. I am reading the first one that came in that involves substance of what the board was discussing tonight. If teachers can remove their masks in their personal space and while speaking, as long as they are 6 feet social distance from others, why can't the children remove their masks at their desk? Why are masks being forced on children who are exempt from the mask mandate? Why is the school district making their own set of rules for our children? the school district is taking away parents' rights over our children, our own children. Those are the comments with respect to the superintendent's report. I'm going to now switch to the comments related to the agenda item having to do with the Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator. The first email is from Jessica Harlan. I am strongly in favor of the position for an Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator in the school district. As a recent graduate of SPASH, in my time as a student, I noticed discriminatory behaviors go ignored against marginalized folks, and it would be beneficial to have someone who can improve the lives of students who are often excluded. For this reason, I am asking for the coordinator position to be Black, Indigenous, people of color, transgender, or a woman, because they will have often experienced marginalization and be motivated to make change in the district. There is an email from Edith Voom, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any names. I'm doing my best. Edith Voom, SPASH class of 2020. To whom it may concern, I am writing to express my fervent support of the proposed Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator. While a student in this district, my classmates and friends of color experience negative interactions due to their race, including well-intended lack of understanding from students and staff. This position would help ensure that all Portage County students feel safe and included while at school, which is vital for academic success and mental/emotional health. Thank you for your consideration. There's an email from Nick Piotr. Hello, school board. If a position is going to be added to alleviate the racial injustices happening in the Stevens Point School District, they would have to have clear goals in mind. I am afraid that empty statements would be made to give the illusion of progress. I suggest a quota to be met for a number of programs to be started or meetings to be had regarding inclusivity within school student faculty. Thank you for your time. An email from Maddie Makowski. Hi, my name is Maddie Makowski, and I'm sending this email to advocate support of the EDI coordinator position. I think that this position in no way would perpetuate racism, as some folks have claimed, but ignoring the need for support staff for marginalized students is racist. I think both the Black, Indigenous, and people of color and the majority community in Stevens Point would benefit and eliminate any disparities in education and help create extra support to groups that may not have access to resources and support. Thank you, and I hope that the Stevens Point School District passes and creates this position. An email from Jack Elzinger. I urge the school board to abandon the plan to hire a coordinator for diversity and inclusion. This type of attempt at brainwashing of our children should have no place in public schools. This is an outrageous effort to inject politics into the classroom in the name of, quote, equity, end quote. If this is adopted, then the community will know that the board abandoned Martin Luther King's guiding principle of judging people, quote, by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, end quote. I am greatly saddened that I am even forced to address this type of bias. An email from Iris Carufo. My name is Iris Carufo. I am a longtime community member of Stevens Point. I am also a member of the smaller group of Native American people living in this community. I believe the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator for the Stevens Point school system is a wonderful idea. I believe it will further promote acceptance and kindness for all the diversity that exists in the community. This position will help our community thrive as we continue to learn and grow with one another. An email from Shelley Stein. I'm a citizen of Stevens Point, and I'm writing in support for the proposed EDI coordinator position. The need and benefits of this position cannot be summarized in 100 words, but I'll try. Racism is real. Color blindness does not make racism go away, especially when we haven't been taught to acknowledge and fight our implicit racial biases. I love Point and want to raise a family here, but it's downright a racist community which makes me want to leave. That needs to change. Please, it's 2021. Don't let Point be left in the 20th century. An email from Stephanie Vong. I am asking for the Stevens Point School Board to give their Hmong and Black, Indigenous, and people of color students somebody to serve as their voice and listen to their demands. How many more students of color are we going to traumatize for white comfort? SOC do not know how to navigate racist experiences in the Stevens Point area school district because of how society prioritizes white comfort. Oftentimes we feel like these little humans cannot handle these conversations about racism, but students of color cannot handle being bullied and handle the results of systematic racism. Quote, unawareness, end quote, can only venture so far. White children can handle the discussions about white privilege, race, and racism without sugarcoating. Children of color cannot handle the reality and death of people that look like them. Krista Olson. I would like to offer my support for the diversity position, especially in regards to promoting equality and proper treatment regardless of sex. Paren male, female. Since Christmas break, my daughter, a SPASH junior, has had 85% of the online interactions with SPASH male students result in solicitation for sex or inappropriate photos. Some of these solicitations occurred from SPASH athletes during times they were traveling back from school sporting events on the bus. She's only had 2 young men that she's been able to keep in contact with that treated her in a respectful manner. Her friends say that's the way it is, just ignore it, but I don't agree. It is long overdue to address the unacceptable behavior and culture that is occurring and to restore back equal and respectful treatment of all students regardless of if they are male or female. I support the diversity position and hope it will start with tackling the inequality issues at the upper grade levels. Sarah, we have an email from Sarah Kim. To whom it may concern, I am submitting a public comment regarding the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator section of the agenda for Monday's meeting. My comment is, the EDI coordinator should be a person of color who is committed to anti-racist work. I am concerned that the ambiguity of the job description will allow for the hiring of a person who will work to mediate racial conflicts and quell disputes rather than serve minority student populations. If the EDI coordinator does not actively fight for students of color, they will only be a patronizing figure to whom students of color can complain to, but will always be gaslit and belittled for the sake of avoiding controversy. This position should support marginalized students, not just vaguely the community. An email from Reggie Eaton. The creation of an EDI coordinator position on a school board level is long overdue. The future hire, if any, needs to be committed to anti-racist work and be a Black, Indigenous, and people of color member of our community. I worry that if this position is created, the same structures of racism and injustice won't be addressed but merely pushed aside. The EDI coordinator position must fight for and alongside Black, Indigenous, and people of color students whose experiences are discredited and overlooked. An email from Cassandra Zhang. My name is Cassandra Zhang, and I support approving the EDI coordinator position. It's important to recognize there are students and staff who come from marginalized communities and address their needs appropriately in order to foster the success that the Stevens Point Area School District aims for. This position isn't racist as those who oppose may believe. Ignoring issues of inequality will not make it go away. Education is the best starting point in creating a more equitable community. Quote, disadvantaged white people are not erased by discussions of disadvantages facing people of color, just as brain cancer is not erased by talking about breast cancer. Quote, and it's Jomo Aluo is the individual that Cassandra was quoting with that last quote. So those are the items that we received with respect to public comment. We will move into item 5, which is the superintendent's report by Craig Gerlach.
Excuse me, my superintendent's report is an overview of our learning models to date, as well as a presentation that supports, quite frankly, getting our students back in person 4 days a week at the secondary level, beginning the fourth quarter. Corey is going to present this. I will add to it. This was information that was put together by Sarah, Corey, and myself. Corey?
Okay. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. As Craig indicated, we're going to go through an update on where we're at with our current learning model, and then share some information with you that has gotten us to the point to where we really feel like we need to bring our secondary students back, grades 7, 12, 4 days a week, starting April 5th, which is the beginning of the fourth quarter. The plan that we have in front of you tonight still includes our basic commitments that we started with 9 months ago when we presented our reopening plan last summer. Staff and student safety has been at the forefront throughout the entire process. We've made sure that we've been following guidance from the CDC as well as the Department of Public Instruction and Portage County Health. We've told our stakeholders that flexibility is key. Because depending on numbers, depending on our capacity within the district, we may need to continue to move in and out of whatever plan we're in throughout the duration of the pandemic. And then there's always been a focus on instruction, and our priority, of course, is to have all staff and all students in our building 5 days a week when we feel like we're able to do that. And unfortunately, we've not been able to do that for some time, but I feel like the plan that we've implemented has allowed for a phased integration of bringing kids back more frequently into our buildings. And that's what we're here to present to you tonight. Our students in grades 7, 12 are struggling. They're struggling academically. They're struggling with social interactions. They're not having enough social interactions with their peers. And actually, we're quite concerned about their social and emotional well-being now as well as into the future. What we have in place right now is for grades pre-K through 6, we've got about 88% of our students that are in our buildings 4 days per week. We have about 11% that is in the e-learning with the dedicated staff member that we made the switch to in January. And we have about 1.5% in our online learning center. Those are the students and families that decided at the beginning of the year they wanted that online option for the entire year. Our secondary students currently, we have 92% in person meaning they come 2 days a week, and the remaining 3 days are online. And we have 8.1% that are in our online learning center. And those numbers are recent numbers. If you recall, we made that switch. We took away the flexible e-learning at semester, which was January 25th. Throughout this process, we've been monitoring our trends in the county, in the state, and within the district. And if you take a look at this chart, you'll see that there's been a significant decrease in numbers in all three of those entities. In the middle of November, and between November and December is when we hit our peak, and we're continuing to decline. In fact, right now, Wisconsin is at a 12% case rate for 100,000 people. The county is at 14%, and within the district, we are at 16%. Right now, we have 8 positive students with COVID, and we have 64 students quarantined. We have 0 staff members with COVID currently, and we have 9 staff members that are quarantined currently.
Right?
Yes.
You're cutting out.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, but I missed most of your statistics, but
Okay.
that's okay. Go ahead.
I can repeat it quickly, Barb. We have 8 students who are currently positive for COVID, 64 that are quarantined, 0 staff members positive, 9 staff members quarantined. So you can see that there's a decline in the trends within the county, the state, as well as within the district. We've also been monitoring what is our capacity within the district to have our students back in our buildings. Our sub-fill rate in January, we had 92% of our open positions, needing subs, were filled at 92%. Our educational assistants at 72%. For February, our sub-fill rate for teachers was at 92%, and for educational assistants, 79%. Currently, we have no known shortages for any cleaning supplies, materials, or any PPE. We have had an influx of masks that were just recently donated from the Boys and Girls Club that they received from an outside entity, and we learned today that we are going to be getting another 24,000 masks delivered from the state. So if there's students that need a mask, we've got masks available. And there have been no major disruptions to our current learning model, and we don't anticipate that there's going to be, but again, we know that we need to be flexible, and if we need to make a shift or an adjustment, we'll do that. Access to vaccination for staff. At 4 o'clock today, we learned that the Department of Health Services is prioritizing COVID-19 vaccinations for all school employees. And there's going to be a separate allocation process and dedicated vaccines for school staff. Their goal is to get all school staff vaccinated by the end of April. Could be before that, but the goal is to have all school staff vaccinated by the end of April. Right now, we have 74% of our staff members that have asked to be registered for an on-site clinic that we're working on. We've been working closely with Portage County Health. We've been working closely with local medical providers. And we are going to get ourselves in a position so that when that vaccine becomes available, we can quickly get as many staff members vaccinated that choose to do that. So 74% have indicated that they want to take advantage of either our site or they're going to be taking care of their vaccine through their own medical provider. So how are we doing in the blended model? As I had indicated earlier, we're concerned about student achievement. Our students are not doing as well when they're in a virtual setting. We know that our students perform better academically when they're in our school buildings in front of our teachers. Our teachers are working tirelessly to try to meet as many student needs as they can. And it's difficult. It's difficult when kids are in the classrooms, and it's difficult when kids are outside of our classrooms and in a virtual environment. But our staff deserve a lot of credit for trying to make this work, and they're doing the very best that they can. We've got concerns about engagement. You know, students, some students engage frequently. Others, it's difficult for them to engage. They may have, you know, parents that are trying to work in the household while also trying to help them, you know, get connected to WebEx or, you know, Google Meet or whatever they need to do with their teacher. So we're concerned about the engagement. And we're quite honestly concerned about what impact this is going to have on student achievement going forward. It's going to, and we need to be ready for that. And we're also concerned about the mental health. We have teens right now in crisis, and we feel like we need to address that, and we feel like we're in a place and we have the capacity to bring more kids back into our buildings so that we can start to get a handle on taking care of the teens that are having some significant mental health issues. Recently, we learned from Portage County Health that last quarter, and they had a significant increase last quarter and even a more significant increase this quarter to include intentional overdoses with students at an alarming rate. That's very, very concerning. So students are significantly struggling with mental health. And we have 24% of our SPASH students that were in the blended model that failed at least one course last semester, first semester of the year. And that's at an increase compared to previous years. How have we responded? Well, we ended our flexible e-learning for our secondary students at the semester. We've been working really hard at finding ways to address students who may not have attained credits, those students that had failures. We're bringing some of those kids back into the school on Wednesdays to help them to attain that credit. We're having conversations about expanded summer school so that students can come in the summertime to attain that credit. We're concerned about students that are preparing for college and may be credit deficient and not ready to make that transition to college. So we're doing everything we possibly can and putting as many interventions in place to help those students attain those credits. We've also increased and have ongoing home visits and school check-ins. We've had a focus on social emotional. So we feel like we're responding as very best that we can, and we'll continue to support teachers and we'll continue to support families and kids as best we can as we move hopefully out of this pandemic and into a more normal environment. Our continued reopening. So I think it was a couple weeks ago, it was on a Friday, the CDC released new guidelines for schools. There's been a real push across the state. There's been a real push with the CDC to get more kids back in school more frequently. There were three things that were really highlighted in that new reopening plan, and it included consistent implementation of layered mitigation practices, such as wearing masks, such as healthy hygiene, such as physically distancing to the greatest extent possible, signage, ventilation, cleaning and disinfecting, contact tracing. So we feel like a lot of those things that we implemented right from the start are continuing to be those things that the CDC is recommending that we do to keep our kids in our buildings. Indicators of community transition, we talked about that. We talked about what are our numbers in the state, what are our numbers in the county, what are our numbers within the district, and we're continuing to monitor those. The CDC put out some information in that new guidance that said, you know, here's an indicator as far as your case rates per 100,000 to bring kids back. And I will tell you that we're at a place where the CDC would say it's okay for you to try bringing kids back into your building more frequently. And then phased mitigation and learning modes. We've done that. We have transitioned. We have shut classrooms down when we've needed to. We've shut a school down when we needed to. We've gone e-learning for a month. We've, taken away the flex e-learning. We've brought more kids back into our buildings second semester. And now we're at another phase in the plan where we'd like to bring our secondary kids back 4 days a week. The CDC, these are just a list of a lot of those things that I just mentioned. The two that the CDC says we need to place most of our attention on is those top two: universal masking and physical distancing, maximized to the greatest extent possible. We know right now we are not keeping kids 6 feet apart every second of every single day. We are doing the very best that we can, but it clearly does not happen at the elementary or at the secondary level every minute of every day. But we'll continue to do our best. Bringing more kids back into SPASH, bringing more kids back into our junior highs, that's a concern. And we're not going to be able to keep our kids 6 feet apart all the time, but we will do our very best. And in a few minutes, I'll tell you some of the things that we're going to do to help us to keep students' distance. The next few slides are really hard to read. I'm just going to help you understand the visual behind this. Across the top, there are some mitigation strategies, such as mask use, physically distancing, disinfection practices, hygiene, ventilation, and then signage. And then what we did was we went through our buildings and we looked at every area of our building, such as buses, entrances, exits, student drop-off and pickup, the office space, stairways, hallways, elevators. And there's 3 or 4 slides here that just has all these different areas. And what we did was, if it was green, we felt like we were able to do a really good job in that area, and we are doing a good job in that area. If it's yellow, it probably is an area that we can't say that we're able to offer that every second of every day. So social distancing, for example, you'll see a lot of yellows there. We feel like in our offices, we're able to do that, but on this slide, the other areas, not all the time. If it's red, it's not happening. If it's gray, we really couldn't measure it. So this, down the left, classrooms, cafeteria, kitchen, health room, isolation rooms. So the gist of these slides are, we feel in most areas we're doing a really good job, and just another reason to be able to bring our kids back into our buildings. We're at a good place to be able to do that. So we have some smaller classrooms within our secondary buildings. We know that we need to distance to the greatest extent possible. We know that we're going to have to do some of those things that we did at the elementary, like remove furniture, remove storage units, take some things out and really distance those desks, distance those tables. We might need to purchase new tables. We might need to purchase new seating arrangements. Right now, the principals are working really hard, and they'll continue to work hard with their staff at how can we best support getting those kids back in schools, and what do you need as far as items in your classroom to make sure that we're distancing as best we can. We also have multiple plexiglass dividers. We implemented those in the elementary. We are going to do that as needed at the secondary buildings as well. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but we received a lot of feedback. Craig went out and spoke to every secondary building last week, shared this plan with them, so they had an opportunity to hear what we were going to be presenting to you tonight. And he spent the majority of the time basically getting feedback from staff. So I feel like we've really received some good information. We also know from students that we were presented a petition in favor of getting our students back in our buildings more. There were about 1,300 students, parents, and community members that signed that petition. And we've heard that there's another petition that is circulating. It has not been presented to us. been presented to us, but that is a petition that is actually in opposition, not to come back more in person. And there was about 300 students and community members that signed that petition. We also have heard from staff. Their biggest concern, I would say, is the distancing. How are we going to assure 6 feet of social distancing? We can't. We are going to assure distancing to the greatest extent possible. Some staff felt like the model that we have is currently working, so why would we abandon it? Some were really concerned about making sure that all staff are vaccinated before we return, and honestly, we can't control that. That vaccine and when we get it and how much we get is outside of our control. So our recommendation is still to bring our kids back, without the guarantee that all staff will be vaccinated. There is a good chance, based on what we, received today, that staff will be vaccinated in a timely manner. We weren't sure, would it be summer? Would it be the start of next year? I feel good about the end of April. I mean, that's a much faster rate than what I had anticipated originally. We also had some staff that said it's time just to get kids back in school. They need to be here. We're worried about them academically. We're worried about them social emotionally. Staff said, let's get them back. Families, they feel the majority of information coming our way from families is, let's get kids back in school. It's time. We're struggling as a family. We need them in the buildings. A couple other areas that we talked about in previous presentations that I wanted to bring up. Grab and go meals. We are going to continue grab and go meals. However, we are only going to be doing grab and go deliveries on Wednesdays, but families will have the opportunity to get a week's worth of meals. They will be frozen meals, ones that they can prepare different than what we've been supplying families with currently. The staff capacity with our food service is needed in our buildings. If we bring our kids back 4 days a week, we need to have staff in our buildings to be able to do that. So the pickup locations will be the same locations, and families will just let us know if they need a week's worth of meals. So the bottom line is every family that needs food is going to be able to get that. And our grab and go meal numbers have decreased. The need for those are decreasing. The other thing to mention with that is the cost. There's no cost for that through the remainder of this year. So those will all be free of charge. Transportation. Our ridership for students in grades 7 through 12 is really low. Kids that go to secondaries generally do not ride our buses, so we're not concerned that we need to make significant operational changes if we bring kids back 4 days. And then we're going to continue our mitigation practices of masking, distancing to the greatest extent possible, and thorough cleaning of our buses and disinfecting between routes. So that will just be continued when we come back. The rationale for this is that, health and safety continue to be our driving concerns for students and staff, and we feel like we're in a really good place, and we feel like we're going to be able to keep that at the forefront, even if we bring kids back 2 additional days at the secondary level. We're going to continue our layers of mitigation. We'll continue to communicate with Portage County. We'll watch the CDC and Department of Public Instruction. And we're going to continue to monitor students' mental health as well as staff. We're concerned about staff's social emotional well-being. This has been a tough year on everybody. And we need to do everything we can to continue to support families, to support students, and to support staff throughout this process. Flexible. We know that we're going to bring more people in our buildings. There's a chance that we're going to maybe have more close contacts. We're going to probably have to shut some classrooms down. We may have to shut schools down. We're hopeful we don't have to, but the chance is there if we're bringing more kids back, and we'll just prepare and plan and deal with that as it comes. Providing 2 additional days gives more direct instruction with teachers, students in front of teachers, which is a good thing. We're hopeful that student achievement will continue to go up and there won't need to be as many interventions for students. And we feel like this is a natural progression. Craig has said from the very start, our goal is to have kids in our buildings 5 days a week. There is a chance, if this goes well, that we still may be able to do that by the end of the year. We're hopeful. But again, we have to see how this goes, and then we'll keep families, we'll keep staff, and we'll keep the board updated if we feel like we're at a place where we can do that before the end of the year. With that, any questions?
Do board members have any questions?
I have a question.
I don't have any questions. This is Judy. I'm glad to see that proposal, and I think it's very well thought out. So thanks for all the time put into putting that together.
Thank you, Judy.
Mike, you had a question.
Yeah. The decision to do this at the beginning of the fourth quarter, is that mainly driven by that's just a really good transition time for something like that? Or do you need that much time between now and the start of the fourth quarter, 1st of April, in order to be ready for it? Or a little of both, I guess.
Yeah, really, it's both. We need a lot of time to get our buildings ready to go. And we feel like there's a better chance that staff will be vaccinated by then.
That's the question, excuse me, that we knew would come up. A number of things. We need to make some, changes in the buildings. We got some classrooms we're gonna have to eliminate some furniture, some we're gonna have to gain. The whole issue of vaccinations, we feel very, very comfortable that we will have vaccinations available for those that are interested. Mid-March, I'm still holding out for early March into then early April. Weather gets a little bit warmer. It gives us a week after spring break. We don't know what sure that's gonna look like. And it's the fourth quarter. It's an even, it's a natural time. There are schools that are going back, starting next week. I just think that we'd be pressing it if we were to do that.
On the vaccination, just based on the sheer number of employees of the district, do you feel like the county or the state will be able to have a dedicated vaccination site just for the school district, or?
We've been putting a tremendous amount of time working with the various clinics. Portage County, we have a follow-up with Gary Garsky tomorrow. We should have this in place by the end of the week. It appears as if we're going to be having a mobile clinic, quite frankly, working with one of our, I guess I'm going to drag my feet as long as I can, one of our local clinics is partnering up with Portage County. And it's really the accessibility of the vaccine. We'll be in a situation where we can set up a mobile site. It's off campus. So if we're hoping to have 700 vaccines available in one day, because we might be able to get that done in one day, if not a day and a half. But we have to be prepared for maybe 200, maybe 300, and then maybe the week after. So we're working out details of all that, but we're not in control of it. And up until now, what's been very disappointing, regardless if you're a clinic or the county, they're getting significantly less than they're asking for. That, however, apparently is starting to change. And I think there's a feeling that there's going to be an abundance in a short period of time, but we just don't know.
We just know that we need to be prepared so that when it's available, we're ready to go.
What is the date that you look to come back 4 days a week?
April 5th.
April 5th. I just asked a question, 4 days a week or 5 days a week?
4.
Why not 5?
Well, I think we want to just step into it. We still will have teachers, the need for teachers to do prep on Wednesday, that still is outside of the classroom, depending on how many people are quarantined, for example. I think it's a step, it's a step in the right direction. Part of it's, let's see how that goes, and if it goes well, I may come back and say, let's now go back 5 days a week.
That judgment would be made after a couple weeks, I take it, doing well. Because the goal is always to get them back 5 days a week before the end of the year, right?
Well, the goal is to get our kids back in school. That didn't change from a year ago when abruptly we all walked out. And if we would have said, we're gonna be having this conversation at this board meeting at the end of February, I don't think any of us would have believed that. And so if you'll go back to, as Corey stated, in June, when we presented, the school board approved authorizing me as superintendent all decisions related to getting back to school. That's a tremendous amount of responsibility that I take very seriously. And I've been saying throughout the course of the year, we need to get our kids back to school 5 days a week. When we can, when it's safe. We're just learning more and more about what this looks like. When we started school in August, when I say we, it's a very general term, I think we feared this. As superintendents, we didn't think we'd be in session by October. We thought we'd all be closed. We didn't participate in fall athletics. As superintendents, even those that did participate, they didn't think we'd make it a couple weeks. Well, we did. Now we had to cancel a couple games, we had to cancel some classes, or we had to quarantine classes, we had to quarantine two buildings, but quite frankly, it wasn't as bad as we feared. Now we're ready to take the next step. In the event something changes and we need to back off, we're gonna consider that as well, but we won't know until we move forward. Right now, we know our kids are struggling. That information that I got from Portage County regarding a significant increase of crisis reporting, and that's bodily harm. And and a significant number of those are purposeful, intentional overdoses. We gotta get our kids back in school. They need each other, they need their staff, they need their teachers, both academically and mentally, in terms of their mental health. So this is a little unusual for me here tonight because I sit here stating that we're prepared to go back to school and we're gonna, on April 5th, we're gonna continue to plan to do so. Very unlike many school districts throughout the state that are voting on this stuff. And quite frankly, they're all coming through as split votes. They're 5-4 or they're 4-3 votes because people can't agree on this stuff. It's difficult. I believe firmly we need to get our kids back to school. And trust me when I say I'm very concerned about the health and well-being of our staff as well. I'm a staff member. I'm here. I'm gonna do what I can do. We'll continue to work with staff that have health issues individually. We've been doing that all year. Our numbers in terms of students are really as low as they've been. I could speak out of turn here, but I think the staff that we have quarantined are not from school spread. I think they're from spread in their outside life. The spread in schools are safer than the public right now. It's safer to be in school than you are out in the public going from one place to another.
Another question would be, did you want to go, Rob?
Oh, please go.
I don't want to.
Can you just talk into the mic?
Oh, sorry.
Just to make sure that,
Okay. Another question, let's say students that are doing the cohort education right now, if their parents, they can go virtual if they say, we don't want, with all the kids coming in, we're worried we're going to pull our kid out.
I'm going to encourage all students in the cohort to come back to school.
Yeah.
Now, if there are some that don't want to or their parents don't want to, we'll deal with those on an individual basis and we'll create a program. That's one of the first things when you talk about the amount of time, Mike, we've got to determine who that is. Going into the online learning center is not the solution at this particular point in time.
Nor do we have the capacity to do that right now. So, like Craig had said, our intent is for those kids to come back 4 days a week.
I think Rob had a question and then Chris.
Yeah, were there any proposed changes to the extracurricular structures? Anything that were?
We're in the middle of beginning our alternate fall, spring season. You know, we participating and practicing, and we'll see what it looks like in the month of March. And then we will continue to have our spring season, which is pushed back into late spring into early summer.
Chris?
So, Corey, coming back,
Microphone, speaking.
oh, I'm sorry. I moved it over and then I moved this way. So, coming back April 5th, with what you know now, kids are struggling academically, socially, emotionally. So this group comes in, is there a separate plan to address, like at a higher level? Now they're coming in and maybe they're behind big time. I know you're doing what you can now, but I would imagine, especially kids who are getting ready to graduate, I mean, there has to be a high, intense, okay, we really need to gear up with these kids that are struggling in both ways. Is there a plan? Because they're not going to just come in and, okay, 4 days now, we're all good.
Our student service staff will go and they'll be highly involved with identifying who those students are. They've already identified.
Right.
In terms of academics, who those are. Maybe not so much the socio-emotional component, because we're limited to what we can find out. When I talk about the significant increase of social services,
Right.
that's just what gets reported through social services. Those aren't parents that might be going right to ER. The other component to the whole thing, Chris, we've been making house visits, and we've been making a lot of them. It's much easier to have the kids be in schools in terms of to have access for a lot of different reasons. You know, oftentimes, we don't like making house calls, but we do. So it's going to, we can better meet the needs of the kids, quite frankly, when they're in our buildings.
Okay.
When I've heard you in the past during the year, you said when people were talking about coming back in person, totally in person, one thing you stated was we can't handle 1,500 kids at SPASH, okay? Because it's, you know, you can't social distance with that. But you know that SPASH doesn't always have that same number of kids all day long. Kids come and go. Is there, and I'm not sure if there is, I don't know how I'd figure it out, a way to say schedule kid A all their in-class things in the morning, and kid B, your in-class things in the afternoon, so those kids would filter in and out, and they wouldn't be there all at the same time. Sounds like a nightmare to me, but...
Well, I think, we're gonna leave up to the principals individually in their buildings. I can say that we do have a number of students in work-based placements, for example, that might be there only a half a day, and of course, we're gonna continue to maximize that. But the whole issue, when you first said 1,500, yeah, I did say that.
Yeah.
That was back in August when we didn't understand, we understood very little about this. And I did make those comments. What we're finding out in terms of the spread not occurring to the level we thought, it is what it is. You know, the CD guidelines are saying continue to maintain social distancing of 6 feet to the extent that you can. You know, if we had to maintain, quite frankly, 6 feet all day long, we could not do it. And now again, as Corey said in the presentation, that could lead to more close contacts. You know, quite frankly, the students that go back home or have to quarantine, they're not going home sick. They're going home because they were a close contact in terms of our protocol. We're sending a lot of healthy kids home because that's our protocol. We're finding out that the spread is not happening in schools. Now, common sense says maybe you put more people in, maybe it does, but there are schools that down in South Milwaukee, in the Milwaukee, southern eastern part of the state, they've been going to, they haven't stopped going to school. They've been in 5 days a week. School districts our size. Their quarantine and positive rates aren't any different than those in the and this is a general comment, schools that are in the cohort models. So there's There's a lot of inconsistency in terms of how schools went about this, but regardless of what one school district did in terms of putting together their program compared to the next, there's very much consistent results in terms of cases that are positive in quarantines.
So G, back to your point, the principals have a lot of work to do between now and April 5th. They'll be looking at, classes that might have large numbers of students and maybe moving those classes to rooms that have more square footage. They'll be looking at student schedules. They'll be doing all of that. I mean, I don't know if we can do exactly what you had mentioned,
Yeah,
but
I know it'd be hard.
yeah, they'll do the best they can.
The one thing that I would say is, we've all been in classrooms, when you have 30 kids in a classroom, it's crowded even without COVID.
Yep.
Teachers, I would hope, would have the ability to say, hey, kids, I got a room next door. Can we split up a little bit? Are there common areas that this is the work we're going to do? Let's have 10 kids go over here.
Yep. Absolutely.
I've got a couple questions. So if it is decided that the students are going to return 4 days a week, how will this be communicated to non-English speaking families?
So Anne, what we would do is we would follow the same procedure that we've done. We send it to individuals to translate and help us put that communication together, and then we would send it out.
Would that be via email, the mass phone call?
Yep, the same way that we would communicate to all other families, we would communicate to them.
Because I recently spoke to some home-speaking families, and they said that emails are understandable, because we know that lots of non-English speaking families are relying on their children to be translating these documents for them and emails, and so for them to understand that it just doesn't make sense. To be asking someone who's in school to translate the documents. So I think we need to do a better job of communicating. Again, this can be done via a voicemail. We can also look at, maybe looking at what staff has the capacity to do it without having them to do more than what they're already required to do. I know families are frustrated because things are changing and they're not aware of it. They're not aware that their children are missing assignments until they get a letter saying, "Hey, your student is missing these assignments and they're failing these. They're failing this." I said, "Hey, what I do is I check on Skyward, but I know it doesn't make sense because if you can't read or speak English, Skyward doesn't really help you." And so they're struggling with that. And then it was discussed about house visits. What are the reasons behind these house visits?
To find out where the kids are, the students. I mean, that's part of it. That's been going on forever and a day. When it comes to students being truant, to find out if they're actually there, and then if they are, have a discussion why they aren't engaging in school, and determine if it's a technology problem, a motivation issue, or is there proper supervision at home? A number of things.
Okay, and is this for students not actively logging into Schoology, or is this students who's missing an excess amount of assignments?
I would have to say, Connie, if you're on, but certainly not even accessing is part of it.
And if there are students that we haven't heard from for an extended period of time, we might do a home visit or a well child check at that point. If it's just a missing assignment, absolutely not. It would be somebody that we, would be concerned about and just haven't heard from.
Okay, because I know, again, speaking to families, one student was missing nearly 30 assignments, and they weren't even aware of it until they received a truancy letter.
Okay.
So they weren't aware, so I'm not, I think we talked a little bit about home visits the last time we had a meeting. but I didn't really, I didn't ask, why these, what's the purpose of these? So just questioning again, speaking to families, these are some of the questions that had come up for them.
Thank you, Anne, for sharing those.
Connie, did you have something to add?
Mainly the home visits have been students that they have seen over a period of time that have not even logged into their computer. So those have been the main focus of the home visits, kids that we're seeing zero attendance on.
Barb, do you have any questions?
I sure do. I have several. First of all, the presentation is very impressive. Thank you. I know you've worked a lot of hours on that. I have some concerns. My first question is, do you think 16 days will be worth it to, how does that compare to the health of our staff and our students, the possibility that they could get COVID with some long-lasting effects, a lot of people. I don't know that 16 days will make up for that mental health crisis that we're in.
I guess I'm not understanding the question, Barb.
You're adding 2 more days to the week, I'm assuming,
I think she's.
Oh,
the fourth quarter.
okay. Any time we can get our kids back in the buildings is going to help. 16 days is 16 days, Barb, and I feel like our kids are in crisis. I know that staff is struggling as well, and we need to keep that at the forefront also, but I'm concerned for the effects that are going to be not only right now, but into the future with kids. And I think if we can get them back in, we need to do it. And I feel like our capacity and our numbers warrant that. We're at a place where we feel like we can safely do so.
Well, we definitely won't be able to keep up that 6-foot distancing. Have you considered one-way traffic in those buildings?
We did that in our elementary buildings, and yes, that's another one of our safety protocols that we will consider at those buildings too, as well as limiting entrance and exits, the number of people at those entrances and exits. All of those things that we did at first with summer school, and then when we brought elementary kids in 4 days a week.
And the CDC recommends closing any dining halls, cafeterias, those spreader areas. Do we currently have them just having box meals, or are there serve yourself salad bars? What's our situation with the food distribution?
Right. So at the elementary level right now, we've got some kids that are eating in the cafeteria and some that are eating in classrooms. That, Barb, question is one of those logistical things that we need time to figure out at our secondary buildings. So what the cafeteria and lunchroom space will look like and how kids will eat and be served is yet to be determined.
Okay. And how about testing? Are we going to do any antigen testing of staff or students with permission, of course, from parents?
We don't have any plan to do any testing of students or staff.
That would be an easy mitigation strategy as well, I think. And what was your response with if a kid or the parents don't want the student back, if they're a high-risk person, what will they do?
Beth has been working with staff all year long on staff that are high risk, and Beth will continue to do that. Students that are not interested in coming back 4 days a week, we're going to have to work with individually with the building principal and teacher to accommodate them appropriately.
Okay, thanks.
I actually had one more question, Barb, if you were done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if it is decided that students are going to return, how much time will families get to be notified of this change?
Our intent, Anne, is to communicate soon regarding this change. We wanted to make sure that we talked to staff first and then, brought it to the board. And soon after this, we'll communicate with families.
And then I noticed that, Corey, with your PowerPoint, with the survey results, can you tell us about how many teachers had had returned that survey?
And there was not a survey per se given. A lot of the feedback came from Craig's visits to the building, and then we received some emails from staff and had conversations with staff, after that meeting.
And maybe just a follow-up, with respect to, you indicated a percentage of staff that have indicated that they are interested in vaccination. I think maybe that's part of
That
that
was a
question.
survey. Yes. Sarah, do you know what the total number of staff was that completed that survey?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. The staff that have indicated they are interested in the vaccine, how many
We're at
staff?
703 individuals who have responded. Of that, I would say we had only maybe 15 staff members indicate that they had already been vaccinated, and then maybe another 40-ish who indicated they were not interested in receiving a vaccine, and then another smaller, I'd say again, like around that 15 number, that indicated they were interested in receiving the vaccination through their provider.
And do you all, I know that you all said that Craig had stopped into the building and spoke with some of the teachers. Do you all think that it could be that some of the staff aren't giving their true, honest opinion due to the possible backlash? Because I see a lot of comments floating on social media, on like news outlets, and just saying if teachers don't want to teach, going back to five days a week, that they should just quit and they can be replaced.
Well, first of all, I've never said that, by the way, so I don't want that to get out there.
I didn't say you did though, Craig. I'm just saying.
There's a lot on social media, quite frankly. I don't pay a lot of attention to it. The whole issue of backlash, that's just not the way I operate. That's not the way we operate. We had a number of staff members indicate their concerns. The vast majority of the people didn't give us any feedback. I would say it was fewer than most that gave us feedback. That said, to your point, I had people that contacted me because I opened it up. If you want to continue to talk about this, I'll be happy to come back. I'll be happy to sit down with you, large group, small group, email me. I had staff email me saying, Craig, thank you, I support getting our kids back. But they didn't feel comfortable saying it at the staff at meetings either. So I'm sure people are uncomfortable about saying things in front of their peers. To what extent, I'm not sure in terms of exactly how many staff members would feel that way. But that goes both ways.
And when or if surveys go out regarding, just about anything, are they confidential? I know there's like SurveyMonkey where it's sent to emails, and I know that you have the option of tracking which emails it's coming from, but are there ways to make it secure so
Yes.
that it is truly an anonymous survey?
Yes, and we've
When we survey, Ann, we don't track email, and the forms we use don't have they have the capacity to do that, but I don't turn that on. So there is no, unless someone self kind of identifies who they are, if they want follow-up, but we would never release that or share that in a way that would create, an unwanted work environment.
Thank you.
I do have another comment about the students. There are a lot of students who are scared to death to come back even 4 days a week. And maybe they also are afraid to speak up. But I did a survey of a few of the high school kids that I know, and none of them said that they were ready to come back because they were fearful. And so we're going to have that, that fear factor. And I think consistency is going to have to be key if you're going to every building had better do their tracing the same. I do contact tracing for the county, and I've had parents tell me, well, we were told this, we were told that, and Corey has quickly addressed those issues when I told her about those, and I appreciate that, Corey. But consistency and staff is going to have to buy in and assure that their people are wearing their masks correctly, not under their nose, and that they are maintaining the 6 feet as best they can.
Any other board members with questions?
I just have one more relating.
Yep.
To this.
Go ahead. Em.
I know that we talked about what happens to those students who may not be comfortable coming back to 4 days a week, and that something will have to be worked out with them. If it does come to coming back to 4 days, and we have a number of students who are not going to be coming back the 4 days, do we have enough support in the district to accommodate these children, to accommodate these students and their families?
Connie, I'll defer to you.
Hi, everyone. When we took away the e-learning, we were very surprised at how many students chose to come back to full person. And we have very few students, given the nature of the pandemic, that chose to go to the online learning center. We are going to have students and families that are going to say that they're very uncomfortable with this. We will deal with that on an individual basis, but I'm pretty convinced that based on the number of students and families that came from the flex learning back to coming in person, that we're going to see more students that will come 4 days a week, and if not, we'll deal with that just like we've dealt with everything with the pandemic, and figure it out for the kids and the families.
Thank you.
So I have a kind of a more logistical question, which is, I was in high school a long time ago, and I was in junior high a long time ago. But I remember junior high and high school isn't like desks. I mean, a lot of our classrooms in our junior high and our high school are tables, or they're labs where you've got. So I guess I'm just asking for a practical about, have we already accessed PPE that we would need, the plexiglass shields, the whatever, or is that something we're in the process of doing? Yes. And is that another step that we're looking to make sure we complete prior to having kids come back?
Yes.
Principals and staff will work to determine what it is they need, and if we don't have it, we'll get it. We still have a ton of plexiglass available. There might be some seating arrangements that need to be reworked. If tables aren't going to work in a classroom to distance students appropriately, we'll find desks. We'll do whatever we need to do.
Are we looking to use spring break? I mean, you've talked about doing a bunch of reconfiguration of classrooms and changes in stuff in classrooms. Are we looking to use spring break to do that, or is that beginning now, I guess?
It'll begin. You know what? The decision here is, we're talking about surveys, we're talking about when a decision gets made. I've made a decision. This is not a power play. We're coming back to school April 5th, unless you as the school board decide differently. And to do that, you would have to have a board meeting. You would have to then rescind the vote to give me authorization, and then you would take a vote on whether or not. That you can do. I mean, so when we talk about what and if we leave tonight, unless the board says we want to come back and have board discussion, we're gonna start communicating regarding coming back to school. And that's just, that was what I was directed to do in June, and that's what I'm going to be doing, unless you tell me differently. I'm not gonna change my thoughts. If you take a vote, and it'll be split. If we survey, it'll be split. If you survey parents, it'll be split. If you survey students, it'll be split. If you survey staff, it'll be split. You as a board will be split. I believe kids gotta get back to school. I firmly believe that. And so a lot's gonna happen after today. We're going to begin communicating to parents and students that we're going back to school April 5th. And we're going to start determining what we need to do for those students that are not engaged. We're going to have to get, and maybe this is a survey that we're going to get, how many students aren't interested in coming back, because we're going to have to, that's real. We're going to have to address that. We know that.
So we will take every ounce of time that we need between now and April 5th to do just that. If we need to remove furniture, get additional plexiglass, whatever we need, and that starts now.
I guess I would encourage, and it's kind of a follow-up to Anne. My kids are through school. I mean, they're young adults now. When they were in school, in junior high and high school, I know there was the mentality that students need to start taking responsibility for themselves, and students need to be responsible for their work, and the importance of communication between student and staff. If there's some way we can end this school year creating a better triangle, because I know for at least 2 of my 4 kids, I would have never learned anything that was communicated to them.
Sure.
Probably all 4 of them.
Sure.
I mean, I just never would have. And I think Anne raised that point, that I think part of this pandemic is recognizing that we probably have to create a more sufficient triangle between our parents and our students and our school community to let people know how our kids are doing. If there's any way that we can do that, at least during this public health pandemic, to ensure that communication loop is working better, I guess I shudder to think of what would have happened in my home, frankly.
So noted, Meg.
So I just have one last thing to say. Craig, I was not aware that you had made the decision for school to resume 4 days a week starting April 5th. I thought that this is a discussion. I didn't realize that you had made that decision already. And I do just want to make it out there that how many of the families have decided to have their students return to school, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And when I talk about having to, is maybe because, if they were at home and they were continuing to fail, they were going to be, or, if they weren't able to log on for various reasons and they didn't have a way to communicate, now the students are going to be truants, right? And so that was kind of like, hey, you have to go back because that's the only way that they are able, that's the only way that you can account for yourself for being in school. And like I tell everyone else that I've been talking to, my students are now just surviving. They are definitely not thriving in the pandemic that we are in right now. So I just want to make that out there. Like, how many of our students are actually not doing this by choice, and parents aren't doing this by choice, but because of other reasons? And I'm not talking about because they have worked full time until they're deciding to send this children back to school, but like other reasons than that.
How would you even?
And because now that we know that students are going back to 4 days a week, I'm looking at the calendar here. We've got a little about five and a half weeks. I think that the ball should be rolling about how do we communicate this with our parents as to what you decide to do, and really say, hey, this is what's going to happen, and see if there is an alternative. I think that it's important for us to give them the alternative, like, hey, you know, if it is, if there are other reasons such as health issues that you're not comfortable with your child going to 4 days a week, talk to us, communicate with us, so that we can figure something out. Really giving them their options.
And I would say most students are surviving and not thriving. And I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why students came back to school in the cohort model for a lot of specific reasons. And I'll be the first to agree. None of this is perfect. It's all very far from perfect.
Are there any comments or questions of board members?
Meg, just one question. This is not, I mean, I'm very supportive of this, very supportive. The kids need to be back in school. Is there any planning yet? We haven't even gotten here yet, but is there any planning yet for summer school?
Yes.
Because I would hope, this is just me personally, I would hope that it would look way different than what it's looked like, especially with kids this last year, that there would be a lot of things offered to them to help bring them, you know, back to a level time. And I know that isn't a discussion with this, but because of this,
Yep.
and I think this is a really good plan, putting safety number one. Not just, we all want, I can't speak for everyone here, but I think we want our kids back in school, back to a normal life. It's not a normal world right now, but I think it's really important. That mitigation is really important, and I do believe that students are safer in school. So this summer school, later, that can be a later talk. I just wanted to mention that.
Yep. Okay, thank you. We will move into item 6, and the item A is Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator.
Okay, let's see if I can find my notes. Shifting gears here, you'll note about a year ago, we came forward when administration with a position related to safety and security, went to the HR committee, finance committee in March, and then the board meeting. There were a number of comments at the board level related to the job description. I think first and foremost, it looked more as if we were hiring a law enforcement position related to safety and security. And there were questions why we weren't emphasizing the issue of mental health as well as equity, diversity, and inclusion. We did make some changes to that, and then we were ready to move forward. COVID-19 hit, it was in March, and things got put on the back burner for the obvious. We talked about hiring the position a couple times early in the summer and thought it's just not a good time to bring in a new position. The students, we don't know if they're going to be in school. The school year started up and running, and we started having conversations of what our needs are. We then had an opening, a resignation in our position. Well, Don Keck resigned, and he moved on as our facilities manager. We restructured that position. We'll talk about that actually in closed session. We're going to have an approval on that position. And we included in that particular job description issues specifically related to safety and security of the physicalness of the buildings. And quite frankly, that's typically where that is in most districts. Then we looked at what our needs are as it relates to the issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and believe that we do have significant needs, not only in this school district, but in our community. I'm sitting on a couple different groups, maybe unofficial, that we have these discussions in terms of issues throughout the school district, and as well as specific to our school district. So changing that job description gave Cabinet the idea of recreating that particular position. If you recall, it was going to come out of Fund 80, which is a community fund. So to come out of Fund 80, it needs to be community-based. So we looked at a number of job descriptions from various universities, our own here, others throughout actually the country, and then a number of school districts provided by the School Board Association came up with a job description related to such topics, and that is in front of you today for consideration. To hire that position, again, out of Fund 80, and you'll note that job description does hold true to specifically talk about community issues, and this would be someone that I would expect would be a liaison, or someone that I would expect that would be heavily involved with various components of our community, as well as tying it back to our school district. So I know, Meg, you had had a number of
Yeah, I just wanted,
public comments on that, and I open that up for discussion.
Right. I want to note that the board earlier this year also agreed as a board that this focus for our district is a priority focus moving forward. And the reality is, right now, everyone working here has a full-time job. And there is no one working here with their existing full-time job that has either the background, expertise, knowledge, time to be able to focus on this and really move the work forward. In order for this work to be moved forward, this district needs a person who, that's their job. And that's their background and their expertise and their knowledge beyond what we as board members have, beyond what current administration have. And so for me, if we as a board are truly committed to create this priority focus and really have that be part of our strategic plan and vision with our district, then we need to invest in it. And so I guess I'm very supportive of this. I'll put that out right now, and I guess I would just, any board members that have questions or comments or suggestions, this job description is a job description that administration created. Like any new position, the reality is over the next several years, this position is going to much more fully create and define itself based on the individual within the job and the resources and the support that this district provides to that position. So like everything else we do as a board, anything new, it's a work in progress and it's a work in process. But this is the best that administration taking a look at existing positions within our state and within our area. This is what I believe we're looking for. So I guess I'd open it up to board members. I don't usually talk first, but I just wanted to put that out there. Do any board members have any comments or questions?
I do. So I of course, am for creating this position, but I think that we really need to be looking at who should be benefiting from this position and why. We shouldn't be creating this position to be checking off boxes and check marking things that we think we're doing to be great. We should be doing this because we want to be great. We need to start off by creating this position for the right reasons. Some of the questions I have is, what kind of power does this person have to influence the change? I know that the description talked about liaison and everything, but if they're there to do their job, but they don't have the power to make any changes, I know that they're read through it. They're going to come back with like on different like reports and whatnot, and reporting back. But I want to know what their findings, how their findings are going to be used, and how their findings are going to be used to make a change for the positive. And what infrastructure will be put in place to support this position. So we know that we want someone who knows what they're doing and to do this position, to do this job. But what kind of support will we be able to provide for them?
First of all, the position will report directly to me. I'm not quite sure if I understand when you use the term power to influence change. In terms of decision-making, I'm confused by the word power. Oftentimes, influencing change it's from the bottom up. It's changing ideas, and it's changing cultures, and it's changing thoughts. It's opening up conversations. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by the power-ish, that term power. The infrastructure, it becomes a position, a district-wide position that, again, it'll report to me. It'll be working with, obviously, building principals. It'll be responsible for creating specific committees, sitting on the culturally responsive practice team that we have individually or right now with teachers, opening up a broader range of committees, working with the Portage County, for example, has their own committee of such, bringing in the resources throughout the community to bring a larger change, and as it relates to the culture of our community is what I'm looking at.
So when I mean like the power to change is, what is their ability to shape and redefine policy, right? So we know that we want to do something for the better for each and every student. But then how do we do this where we can say, yep, so this person is here to provide support for you. This person is going to be talking with this, and they're going to be looking at this and like, what do we need to change so that per our mission statement, so that we can make, so that we, every student is successful. And so when I say the power to change, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I believe that this particular person in the job description now speaks towards being involved with policy specific. And I also agree when we rewrite our strategic plan next year that this, of course, that isn't determined by me, it's determined by a process. I would expect, however, that this issue become a pillar of one of our strategic plan moving forward. And I would expect that that person would be heavily involved with that.
Do any other board members have any questions? Mike?
Is this a position that you would say is common of school districts our size in Wisconsin?
Yes, and it's growing. The school districts that we receive job descriptions are districts our size. I guess Monona Grove had one, which is about half of our size, but districts in that 7,000 range, I believe you got your larger schools, the Green Bays and the Madisons, but there are a number of school districts that have this position, and quite frankly, those that don't are having these conversations about creating that. It's about how does it fit into your current structure, your thoughts and needs of your community, quite frankly, expectations, but yes, long answer for yes.
You know, you had mentioned and it's listed in the job description quite a bit, that they're a liaison to the community. What other types of, I know your role as a superintendent, you're a liaison to the community. What other types of roles do we have in the district that serve like that?
It's an interesting question. Mike. I'll be the first to say when we, as a liaison to the community, when we have the discussions, and the discussions are continuing to grow regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm not an expert. I'm not, and I don't know, I shouldn't say that. Going back to what Meg had said, part of this is it's time. If you don't wake up in the morning and this is your job, it's the last thing, it just gets put on the back burner. I've been in this business a long time. And this issue's been here. 20 years ago, we called it tolerance, teaching tolerance. And it's just evolved over time. If we don't have somebody that's focusing on this and working with myself, the board, staff, the community, it just gets forgotten. And I don't have the expertise.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm learning. I will continue to learn, but I don't have the expertise, and I'm not convinced there's anybody that I work closely with in the school district that has the expertise. And then we find ourselves in difficult situations, and we got to lean on somebody. And I've used my resources around the community, and there are resources. But it's just that, it's a resource. That group, those people have their own positions as well.
Yeah, I just asked that question because it seems like most of the job descriptions we look at, you just don't see that much of a role of being a liaison. So I think that's going to be very interesting about this. And
well, and maybe that talks to what Ann said. You know what? When you use that term power, I just don't like that word. But what authority does that position have? That'll grow. When you terms of liaison is a liaison takes information to that group and it relays it back to here versus having serious feedback and input to make change. Maybe that term needs to be discussed specifically as we move forward, because I would expect that this person will be attending various organizational meetings and whatnot that will have influence and say around the table. They need to.
Yeah.
They'll also have to work very closely with myself and cabinet, so we're in lockstep.
yeah. And again, don't think I have a problem with the term because I think it's a very important part of the job description and their job duties. Will their office be here in Bliss more than likely, or, yeah,
It'll also work very closely with student services,
yeah.
very closely with student services.
And Mike, the reason I believe too that's liaison pieces in here is there are so many different organizations within the community that are working on this very issue. And I know that Craig has been involved in a lot of those conversations, so we need to continue to be part of that, and we need to continue to provide input and receive input so that we can make better decisions within the district.
No, I agree. Thanks.
Chris?
So, one person I thought of, Mike, when you asked that question, was Sarah. Because I think Sarah is really a link for our district out there. I also think our kids are more world citizens now than they ever have been. And we're in a small community. And I think one of the things, the potential of this position is that it will affect students, staff, community, and link them together, because I think you need someone who has to be part of all of those to understand what the concerns are, ways that, and I don't know anything about this type of position, but as I read it, and I know there were a couple business people that I talked to that are having these kind of discussions. They're a large business and they are dealing with all kinds of things, and the people that they talk to and that they work with, they want people who understand that we are now world citizens. And it's actually a little harder, maybe a lot harder, living in a small town or a small area versus a Chicago or Milwaukee or, large cities. So I think this could be a really, really powerful position. But I do think it will take time to have those connections out there to see what can we all do better?
Right.
You know, staff, board, everyone, so.
Do any other board members have any comments or questions?
I'd have a comment and maybe a question. This position, I read through all the job description. I don't know anybody who could do all that but Superman. You know, that's a lot of stuff. And the person that gets hired, I would view this as their job is going to be, like, if you hired one person, the way this position looks will be very different than if you hired another person, because they're going to create their own infrastructure. I would assume they'd be welcomed on community committees and things like that. So the person we look for is, I mean, how am I saying this? They will create their own job, essentially, and we have to know what that is. I would say, though, if we create a job like that, we need to be able to evaluate it. And I don't know if it's a success or not. And maybe that depends on the person you hire, because they may do the job in very different ways and maybe be successful or not. So as we look at this, you know, to me, if something new like this, there should be a way to evaluate if in 3 years is a success, you know. And the person that gets hired has to know that.
I'm not, yeah, there were some questions and some comments in there.
Sorry.
So noted, though,
Sorry.
on how do you measure that success?
And I don't know how.
And that's, I hear you. I don't know if I could answer that right now.
That may be a function of the person you hire.
I agree that the person is going to have a tremendous amount of impact and influence in terms of how this does grow. I'll say that this person's going to be experienced, or they're not going to get hired. I mean, this requires somebody with some experience, very involved in a high level of experience. And I'll be frank, that concerns me, because there's not, I don't know, maybe there's going to be a huge pool out there. Time will tell on that, but I hear you.
Jeff, and then
Yeah.
Rob. Jeff, and then Rob, and then we'll go to the
One
next.
thing, I do have something to say, but I gotta find my charger, so if I get disconnected,
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
log back in.
All right, no worries. All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, just to address that comment on how you're going to measure the performance of the job, I think that's an excellent question. But I think one of the best sources for determining how to evaluate that is from the person in that position. First of all, because they're the experts. The other thing is, you know, they want to do a good job, and they want to be able to show you that they can do a good job. So I've found that a lot of those metrics, a lot of those measurements can best be determined by the person that's going to fill that position.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Rob?
Do we have, of the items that are listed here, one area that is the most critical need? So if someone's coming in and we have a rather broad list of duties, a rather broad list of groups that this individual will be working with, is there one or two that we could say for certain this should be an initial source of focus for this position? Or are we saying this person comes in, they identify the one or two or three or all areas of focus, and that's where that individual starts to build out the position?
You know, I'm going to answer that this way. I started with the, this job description took months because it was difficult. I started with the title, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, EDI, you know, we love acronyms. And I asked the question to somebody, it just doesn't flow. And they said, if you're going to use the term equity. There's a difference between equity and diversity and inclusion. So I got that in terms of, because there's a lot there, a lot there. What's most important is equity and understanding what equity is. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people think equity is equal. It's not equal. You might need something, my two kids are very different, and they need things that are different. It's not equal. But I try to deal with them in an equitable manner because their needs are different. You know, you ask a very good question. There's an awful lot here. We've intentionally put a lot here. I did have some feedback from the university, some of the people that are involved with this, some people that are involved with these issues in Portage County, you know, as well as some of my colleagues throughout the state to take a look at it. And of course, everybody could say, well, maybe you want to do this or that, but generally speaking, it's a good place to start. And we tweak, we reevaluate job descriptions all the time. Most common is when you have somebody that leaves and you say, oh, we're going to rehire this position, let's take a look at it. And then you tend to look at job descriptions when maybe there's a need, and it's just like, okay, we got a need, who can I assign this one to? And this one's a little bit big to assign to somebody. Not a very good answer.
Well, and we've had some conversations, Rob, about doing a real needs assessment first, and then determining what it is the focus should be, because we've not really done a true needs assessment in this area.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that could be the direction we go.
Gotcha.
So about 5 years ago, we created the Director of Communications position. At the time when we created it, we knew that we as a district were not providing the communication that we needed to provide to our external constituents, to our internal constituents. And we truly needed a focus. And, you know, we created that position, and thank God Sarah was here and was willing to stay with us and take it on. And I think you would agree with me, over the course of the first period of time, part of it was just assessing what's here.
Yep.
You know, what's going on? And then out of that, what do we want to create? But also, again, pointing to that position, things in our community happened. Things in our school community happened, and have continued to happen that have, at least for me, just brought home over and over again about the importance of that ability to communicate. A large part of that position became crisis communication and crisis management. And I think this is a unique position. There's nothing like this in our district, just like there's nothing like the Director of Communications. But there's so much work that we could and should be doing in this area. And I think the first part of anyone coming into this position is really going to be that down deep look at where are we in the district, what's already happening, and then that strategic planning process about what do we want to do next. And without a position such as this, I just don't see how that happens here. So.
Well, Craig, you said that we had, that other districts have this position, similar? Larger districts, they all have a situation like this, that it's a common position?
Yes, it depends on how large the district. You go into Madison, they got a department in this.
Yeah.
You can't compare ourselves to Madison, but I would say that, and those that don't are continuing to look at this. Universities, it's very common. Every university has this position. I can run through them, Wauwatosa, Green Bay, just don't have the list in front of me, but we looked at Eau Claire, North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Just a number. Part of La Crosse has one, yes. So it's not uncommon. Now, the positions themselves are very different in terms of what that looks like, and that's very unique to the organization.
Judy, did you have a comment? I thought I heard you.
Yes, thank you. I agree that this is something that we need in the district, because while things become important unless we put resources toward it, it doesn't happen. Or we start and stop a lot of things, but nobody can sustain it. So I think it's good that we're looking at this, and it does fit those other criteria in that original job description that you brought up earlier, that missing piece. The only thing that I'm looking at is in those other duties is that mediate equity complaints. That one just, to me, while it fits somewhat, just seems a little odd in that job description, because the rest of it kind of flows with you're doing training and legislation and policy, and that one I wasn't quite sure about.
I actually agree with you on that. Right now, that's Caleb's responsibility. I think what we would do is continue, because when you start talking about that particular job description, it becomes administrative, and this is not an administrative position. And that Caleb Fight would be we'll reword that, we'll continue to be responsible for that. However, we would expect that Caleb would rely on this person to get some feedback.
Right, so what I would say is, in that position, it really is, support, become that expert, or that subject matter expert in those, in diversity, inclusion,
and not being involved what could be or lead to some type of disciplinary action.
Right, but not that mediate just seems like, it doesn't seem to fit.
Yeah. So noted.
I've got a couple more things to talk about in creating this position. So I do just want to thank Craig and Beth for bringing this to the agenda. I think that it is a much needed position within our school district, and I would highly encourage for us to all pass tonight. I do just have a couple of things regarding the position, the hiring, and a couple of things on the description. On the job description, it states that a bachelor's or a master's is required and some experience. In my professional experience of working, I have met some folks who have not gone beyond high school, and it's not because it was their choice to not go, but there are various reasons as why they couldn't go. So with where I'm going with this is that I think we should also put on there that if you have the equivalent experience of this, that we can certainly take a look at omitting the bachelor's or the master's. If we have someone who's been doing this kind of diversity work for 10, 15 years, but they only have a high school degree, and we have someone who's got a bachelor's or a master's and then coming into this line of work for 1 or 2 years, I would certainly choose someone who has had far more hands-on experience than someone with a college degree. I know that a lot of jobs are looking for college degrees over experience, but I think as a school district where we're teaching our young folks what it means, I think we need to do that, is to look at also the experience. Someone who's got years of experience doing this is going to be ready to take on and say, okay, so where are we at? What does your policy look like? And what needs to go from there? And be familiar with the process already. Another thing with this is I believe that, I truly believe that because this is going to be the equity, diversity, and inclusion coordinator, that we need to take a look at our hiring practice for this specific position. I think we need to get a committee together who will be doing this hiring. This committee should consist of BIPOC community members and marginalized students. Because if we're saying that this is for the marginalized students within our school districts, shouldn't we be getting the expert advice from these folks who are going to be receiving these services, or who's going to be most benefiting from these services? I know we got a lot of comments about race, but what those comments fail to realize is that we have students from the LGBTQ community. We have ableism. We have social economic. We have all of that. And I think if we keep this with the staff who are saying that we need this change, I think they're not going to be able to recognize the qualities that we need for the person to be leading this position.
So noted for each one of our positions, and we have a discussion internally in terms of what are appropriate groups to be involved with certain interviews, and oftentimes that does change based on the position itself.
Are there any other comments or questions of board members? If not, I would be looking for a motion to approve the creation of an equity, diversity, and inclusion coordinator position for the district to perform the responsibilities included in the attached job description.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion by Jeff and I've got a second by Mike. Any other questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? The motion is approved. We'll move into item 7,
Thank you.
general, which is our next school board meeting is going to be on March 8th, our regular school board meeting. And I now need a motion to go into closed session under Wisconsin Statute 1985, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically consideration of facilities and safety manager employment recommendation and contract. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ebel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Scott. Carlene, if you could call the roll, please.
Sorry.
Ms. Reno?
Yes.
Mr. Ebel?
Yes.
Ms. Portson?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Pope?
Yes.
Ms. Va?
Yes.
Mr. Mansky?
Yes.
Ms. Zerler?
Yes.
Unanimous.
All right, so we are now going to get ourselves ready to go into closed